Indiana Fever, they can't seem to do nothing right at this second. No decision they make is a decision that the majority of the Caitlin Clark fans are happy with. Not exactly sure what they're up to or what they're doing, but they're doing something and they're up to something. Is it going to lead to wins? That remains to be seen. Is it going to lead to championships? That remains to be seen. But one thing I do know, if this team fails to get to the WNBA Finals, this has been a massive failure.
Caitlin Clark leaving. The Indiana Fever are already losing control before the season even begins. Nobody expected it to spiral like this. Just months ago, this franchise was the center of a basketball revolution. Now it's the center of a controversy. One decision turned into questions. Those questions turned into frustration, and that frustration is now turning into something much bigger.
The Indiana Fever don't value Caitlin Clark. Stephanie White does not value Caitlin Clark in the way that she should, and it shows in the way that they talk about her, in the way that they utilize her, in the way that they surround her with players who don't really compliment her. I was watching Stephanie White's interview directly after the draft, and she mentioned something along the lines of Caitlin Clark can play in both positions, and they were going over whether or not Raven Johnson will be a good fit on the Fever, and Stephanie White's perspective was, well, Caitlin Clark can play in both positions. Kelsey Mitchell can play in both positions. So adding Raven Johnson makes sense because she'll be able to complement these players in both.
Because this isn't just about basketball anymore. It's about trust. And right now, that trust is breaking. Everything changed the moment Caitlin Clark stepped into the league. This wasn't just another rookie arrival. This was a cultural reset. A moment that shifted the entire landscape of women's basketball almost overnight. Arenas that once had empty seats were suddenly sold out. Ticket prices surged. National broadcasts pulled in record-breaking audiences. The Indiana Fever, a team that had been quietly rebuilding, instantly became the most watched team in the league. And it wasn't just hype, it was impact. Clark brought a style of play that demanded attention, deep-range shooting, elite court vision, the ability to control tempo like a veteran. Even while dealing with physical defenses and the adjustment to a faster, stronger league, she still put up numbers that made people stop and pay attention.
It's no surprise. The biggest concerns going into the WNBA season is, what if Stephanie White plays Caitlin Clark off the ball a few minutes a game? What if Aaliyah Boston gets hurt? Two valid concerns. What if Aaliyah Boston doesn't get hurt? What if having a healthy Caitlin Clark alone changes everything, the entire dynamics of this team? What if having Aaliyah Boston at the very top of her game and Kelsey Mitchell coming off an MVP type season?
Nearly 17 points per game, around 9 assists, and she did it while often playing through physical wear and constant pressure. But what mattered more than the stats was the belief. Fans believed this was the beginning of something special, a new era. A team that could finally rise from irrelevance and become a legitimate contender, and not years from now, but soon, because the pieces were there. Aaliyah Boston, a dominant presence in the paint. Kelsey Mitchell, a proven scorer capable of taking over games. And Caitlin Clark, the engine that could connect everything. 3 stars, 1 vision, 1 opportunity. This was supposed to be the moment everything clicked. But here's the part nobody saw coming. Instead of building momentum, things started to feel off.
I think Caitlin Clark's attitude has been undermined, and she doesn't want to be the leader of the team anymore because they've basically brainwashed her and brainwashed the team into, hey, we're better if Kelsey Mitchell's the leader or if Aaliyah Boston is the leader. And so Caitlin Clark has been bullied into coming out of her natural personality and thinking, hey, I'm just one of 5 here on the court or one of 12 here on the team. And that's a monumental mistake financially. And I think over the course of time, you're going to see it's a monumental mistake in terms of on-court play.
Because when expectations rise this fast, every decision matters more than ever. And the first cracks, they didn't come during a game. They came before the season even began. What if the problem isn't talent, but how that talent is being used? The first real wave of concern didn't come from losses. It came from words. When Stephanie White spoke about the team's direction, One particular idea stood out, the concept of using Caitlin Clark both on and off the ball. On paper, it sounded like versatility, flexibility, a way to make the offense unpredictable. But to fans, it sounded like something else entirely, confusion.
Winner, and when you have players who understand what it takes to win, when they've been surrounded by greatness, throughout their entire career, they know how to play with other great players, and it's going to impact our team.
Especially with all the injuries you had last year and just Ravens' defensive facility.
Well, we're not speaking those into existence anymore, but I think it helps because Ty is a player who's a combo who can play on and off the ball. Caitlin is a player who can play on and off the ball. Raven is a point guard that primarily has had the ball in her hands, and so I think it gives us some versatility. Thankfully, having a couple of different guards gives us the ability to allow Kelsey to rest.
And then came the move that turned quiet concern into full-blown backlash. If the coaching comments raised eyebrows, the draft decisions raised alarms. The Indiana Fever had a clear opportunity to build around Caitlin Clark with pieces that maximize her strengths. Add shooting, add size, create spacing, make defenses pay for focusing too much on her. And for a moment, it looked like they did exactly that. They selected a 6'4" sharpshooter, a player many believed had late first-round value, someone who could stretch the floor, someone who fit perfectly next to a playmaker like Clark. It made sense, until it didn't, because instead of giving her a real opportunity, she was placed on a developmental contract, and that changed everything. A developmental contract isn't just a label. It limits playing time, limits exposure, and most importantly, it opens the door for other teams to step in after a short window. So the question became unavoidable. If you might need her anyway, why not commit now? At the same time, the Fever continued stacking guards. More depth in areas that were already crowded. More players who operate. To fans, it didn't look like patience. It looked like hesitation. And hesitation in a moment like this feels dangerous. Because when you have a generational talent, you don't experiment, you commit. And suddenly, this wasn't about one decision anymore. It was about a pattern. And once fans started noticing the pattern, everything changed. At first, it was just noise. A few comments here, some frustration there, typical fan reactions. But then, it grew. Social media filled with debates. Fan forums turned into battlegrounds. Every move, every quote, every decision was dissected in real time. Fans began questioning leadership, questioning direction, questioning whether the organization truly understood the moment it was in. And then came something even more serious. Action. People started talking about canceling tickets, backing out of travel plans, reconsidering the time and money they had already committed. Not out of anger alone, but out of doubt. Because supporting a team requires belief. And that belief was starting to fade. Even internal voices added fuel to the fire. Comments perceived as dismissive. Messages that didn't align with what fans were feeling. Instead of calming the situation, they amplified it. And now, what used to be scattered complaints had become a unified message. So the real question is this just early chaos before greatness, or the beginning of something the Fever won't be able to recover from? If you want more deep stories, rivalries, and real basketball drama like this, make sure to subscribe.